At 4 a.m. on August 16, 2025, Burkina Faso executed a massive weapons seizure that stunned the world. In a high-stakes operation personally overseen by President Ibrahim Traoré, authorities intercepted 57 trucks crammed with military arms and ammunition. The immediate questions were stark. Who were these weapons destined for, and who was orchestrating the shipment? The interception occurred in the Canary region near the Togolese frontier. During a routine patrol, border guards noticed something out of the ordinary: a long convoy moving slowly along the usually quiet border road in the dead of night. The timing and the convoy's size set off alarm bells. Captain Moussa Kabore, the border commander, alerted senior officials right away. Initial reports claimed the trucks carried humanitarian aid, but that explanation didn't add up. Who ships aid at midnight via backroads? President Traoré acted without delay. Sensing the risk, he contacted Special Forces Commander General Ibrahim Zabo and gave clear, measured orders: intercept the convoy, but proceed with extreme caution. This could be more than simple smuggling. Special Forces moved quickly, laying a covert ambush along the convoy's route while drones and helicopters watched from above. At exactly 4 a.m., the blockade was put in place. Caught off guard, the convoy drivers attempted to flee, but within minutes they were detained. When the first truck was opened, the discovery left the team speechless. Beneath sacks disguised as relief supplies lay AK-47s, M16 rifles, rocket launchers, grenades, the inventory of a full military arsenal. Every truck held the same deadly cargo. Captain Kabore phoned the president. "Sir, you won't believe this. These trucks contain enough weapons to arm an entire army." President Traoré replied, "Secure everything. Not a single round can be lost. Make those drivers talk. We must find out who is behind this." The scale of the haul made clear this was no local smuggling ring. Someone was preparing for large-scale violence. Interrogations began. The first detainee to break was driver Mark Antoine Zongo, trembling as he spoke. "They told us we were hauling agricultural machinery parts," he said. "We were to drop them at a warehouse in Togo. From there, they'd be shipped overseas." But as investigators pushed further, the story unraveled. Most drivers truly had no idea what they transported, while the organizers had planned each detail. Trucks had departed from different locations at staggered times, taken varied routes, and only converged just before the border, a deliberate tactic to avoid detection. By the second day, forensics revealed even more alarming details. Burkina Faso's intelligence services managed to recover partial serial numbers from weapons whose markings had been erased. Using advanced forensic techniques, they traced origins that surprised them. Some arms were remnants from the Libyan civil war, others had seen service in Yemen, and a portion were brand new, straight from factories and never fired. The total value of the shipment exceeded $700 million, raising the urgent question: who could finance such an operation, and to what end? President Traoré immediately convened an emergency National Security Council meeting. The seized arsenal was laid out: 25,000 AK-47s, 10,000 M16s, 13 million rounds of ammunition, 70,000 hand grenades, 2,500 rocket launchers, 400 anti-aircraft missiles, and 50 tons of explosives. Defense Minister General Sadou reacted in disbelief. "This is not a shipment, this is an invasion force." Interior Minister Husseini warned, had these weapons reached their destination, Burkina Faso could be plunged into chaos. Terror groups could wage a long insurgency. Worse, this could spark a coup. Traoré stood and addressed the room. "This is not random. It is part of a much larger scheme to destabilize our country, to turn us into another Libya, Syria, or Yemen." But we stopped it in time. Then the head of intelligence dropped another revelation. One driver had named a destination: secret warehouses inside Ouagadougou where the arms were to be stockpiled and distributed. Without hesitation, the president ordered, "Launch Operation Storm at first light. Search every suspicious warehouse in Ouagadougou. Find who is waiting for these weapons. And most importantly, follow the money. Trace the financing. That's where the truth lies." This was far more than a smuggling case. It was an attempt to ignite a shadow war. And by intercepting the convoy, Traoré and his forces may have prevented a catastrophe. At dawn the next day, Operation Storm began in the capital.
In an interview
Before dawn on August 17, 2025, a series of coordinated raids unfolded across Burkina Faso. Security forces stormed 23 separate locations, uncovering weapons stockpiles in 17 of them. Those arrested weren't unknown faces. Among them were ex-ministers, retired generals, wealthy businessmen, and even foreign diplomats. One thing bound them all, their open opposition to President Ibrahim Traoré's government. By the fourth day, the investigation revealed something far more sinister. Francois Bongo, a well-connected businessman, finally broke under interrogation. His words sent shockwaves through the room. Trembling, he confessed, this wasn't just about weapons. The plan had been in motion for months. We were promised support from abroad. The goal was simple: overthrow President Traoré and replace him with a pro-Western puppet regime. Traoré leaned forward. "Which foreign powers?" he demanded. Bongo hesitated, then whispered, "Meetings were held in Accra. Some representatives came from Abidjan. The directives came from Paris, and approval from Washington." The silence that followed was deafening. Slowly, Bongo laid out the rest. The plan was methodical. Stage fake terrorist attacks to cause panic, use the chaos to rally the opposition, and with help from traitors inside the army, trigger a military coup. This wasn't amateur work. The operation had a code name: Operation Restored Democracy. Its budget? $700 million. The 57 trucks of seized weapons. Only Phase 1. Under mounting pressure, Bongo exposed even more. Foreign diplomats, executives of multinational corporations, and officials tied to international NGOs were allegedly involved. President Traoré realized the world needed to see the truth. He called a national press conference, one that would be remembered for decades. Behind him stood rows of captured weapons, a chilling display of what could have been a national catastrophe. "My fellow Burkinabe, and to the global community," he began firmly, 3 days ago, we intercepted the largest arms smuggling attempt in our history. But this was not simple smuggling. It was a coordinated effort to destroy our country from within. Holding up classified documents, he continued, "Here is the proof: 47 trucks, $100 million in weaponry, all aimed at plunging Burkina Faso into chaos and installing leaders who serve foreign powers instead of our people." His tone hardened. "I cannot yet reveal all the origins, but understand this. Imperialist forces still believe they can control Africa. They are wrong. We are no longer asleep." Reporters fired questions. CNN: "Which countries are responsible?" Traoré: "The investigation continues, but many of these weapons trace back to NATO countries." BBC: "Who are the masterminds?" Traoré: 17 suspects, including former ministers and generals, are in custody. More will follow." Al Jazeera: "Will this affect regional stability?" Traoré: "This is not just an attack on Burkina Faso, it's an attack on Africa itself. Similar plots are underway in Mali, Niger, and Guinea. We must stand together." Russian media: "What's next for security?" Traoré: "The army is on high alert. Our borders are locked down. And most importantly, our people stand united." To conclude, Traoré played a confession video of Francois Bongo. On screen, the businessman wept. "They lied to us. They said it was for democracy, but all we were doing was destroying our own nation." The president was right. We betrayed our people. The room was silent as Traoré spoke his final words. This is the true face of betrayal. People willing to sell their country for money and power. But they have failed. Burkina Faso stands strong, and it will remain free. By day 5, digital forensics teams uncovered an even darker truth. Data from seized laptops and phones revealed that Burkina Faso was only one target among many. Plans existed to remove Mali's Assimi Goïta, Niger's Abdourahmane Chiani, and others, all to install Western-friendly regimes across the Sahel. The financing was staggering, over $1 billion routed through Gulf accounts and European banks. This was no local conspiracy. It was a global operation, and Traoré had just exposed it to the world.
President Ibrahim Traoré called a second press conference. This time his voice carried fire, and his message had no filters. "The masks are off," he declared. "To those dreaming of recolonizing Africa, listen carefully. We are the descendants of Thomas Sankara, and we will never bow to anyone." Then came the shock. Holding up a new batch of classified papers, Traoré revealed something that left even his advisors stunned. The conspirators had already drawn up a new government structure, complete with names of ministers, departments, and even their first set of policies. They were ready to take power before the coup even began, Traoré said sharply. Look at their arrogance. They divided our ministries as if this land belonged to them. But they forgot one thing. Burkina Faso belongs to its people, not to foreign hands. Among those newly detained were several foreign nationals. 3 French, 2 British, 1 American, and 2 Israelis. Each carried diplomatic passports, yet none were actual diplomats. Their capture triggered an international uproar. Western nations demanded their release, but Traoré refused to yield. Carrying a diplomatic passport does not grant immunity to commit crimes on Burkinabe soil, he stated firmly. On day 6, the accused were brought before the High Court under heavy security. The charges were grave: attempting to overthrow the state, leading a terrorist organization, arms trafficking, and treason. The courtroom overflowed with citizens demanding justice. The accused looked defeated. Some wept, others begged for mercy. But the evidence was overwhelming. The prosecutor presented audio recordings, surveillance videos, financial transfers, and confessions. The entire conspiracy laid bare. Even defense lawyers struggled to argue back. Meanwhile, the world watched closely. Western powers began threatening economic sanctions if the foreign detainees weren't released. Still, Traoré stood unshaken. History, he said, will not be kind to those who try to bully a free nation. As pressure grew, support arrived from elsewhere. Russia declared. President Traoré acted within his sovereign right to defend his nation. China announced it would donate security equipment to strengthen Burkina Faso's defenses. Turkey joined in. Africa's safety is our safety. Arms smuggling is a crime against humanity. Iran condemned the entire plot, warning, imperial powers must keep their hands off Africa. Democracy cannot be forced at gunpoint. And Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro went further. Brother Traoré is today's Simón Bolívar, a hero in the struggle against imperialism. Then came August 17th. In the capital, tens of thousands gathered to hear President Traoré's historic address. My beloved people, he began. A week ago, we stopped a conspiracy designed to destroy our nation. We intercepted 57 trucks filled with weapons. But more importantly, we exposed their plan to divide us. Cheers erupted through the crowd. This victory, he continued, is not just Burkina Faso's. It belongs to all of Africa. No one will ever again use our continent as a chessboard. No one will make us puppets. The square vibrated with chants of Traoré, Traoré. Women raised victory cries. The youth drummed in rhythm, and elders wept with pride. Traoré closed his speech with words that echoed through history. We will melt these weapons and turn them into schools. We will build hospitals. We will transform tools of death into instruments of life. That is our true victory. When the speech ended, joy swept through the city. Strangers hugged, families danced, and tears of relief flowed freely. Burkina Faso had avoided catastrophe and reclaimed its pride. By August 18th, Traoré's promise was fulfilled. Some of the seized weapons were melted down and sold as scrap metal, funding new education projects. Others were retained to modernize the Burkinabe army. The rest were destroyed forever. But this wasn't just about weapons. It was about rebirth, a symbol of Africa awakening to its own power. Traoré hadn't only disarmed a coup, he had restored a continent's dignity and declared to the world, Africa will write its own future. As the shockwaves of the operation rippled across the region, it felt as if a new era was dawning. The old ways, intimidation, bribery, violence, and foreign manipulation, were beginning to lose their power. That evening, President Traoré made another unexpected announcement. He invited the entire nation to a massive public gathering at Independence Square, where some of the seized weapons would be unveiled before the people. Tens of thousands arrived. Gasps echoed through the crowd as they stared at towering heaps of rifles, rockets, and grenades. An elderly man broke into tears. They were going to kill our grandchildren with these, he whispered. Nearby, a young woman sobbed, shouting, if it wasn't for Traoré, we'd already be living in a civil war. Then, calm and resolute, President Traoré stepped up to the microphone. His voice carried across the square. This is the future our enemies had planned for us. But we stayed alert. We stood united. And we won, the audience roared. Then came a promise that electrified the crowd. With the money earned from melting these weapons, we will build 100 new schools, 50 health clinics, and 1,000 kilometers of irrigation canals. We will turn tools of death into instruments of life. As the cheers grew louder, a giant furnace was wheeled onto the stage. Before the eyes of the nation and the world, the first rifle was dropped into the fire. The metal softened, glowed, and was poured into a mold. "The first thing we are forging," Traoré declared, "is a school bell. And every morning when our children hear it ring, they will hear the sound of peace." The scene made global headlines. International media called it a turning point in African history. A United Nations representative described it as a living symbol of peace, weapons reborn into hope. The African Union's envoy added, "Traoré didn't just seize illegal arms, he changed Africa's destiny." The whole continent is now watching, ready to follow. Meanwhile, back in court, the investigation deepened. New confessions from the arrested conspirators revealed something far darker than expected. The plot wasn't limited to Burkina Faso. It was part of a vast regional operation. The origin of the weapons was finally traced. They had been manufactured in Eastern Europe, funneled through Libya, and smuggled south into the Sahel. At every border, bribes were paid, corrupt officials looked the other way, and powerful intermediaries ensured smooth passage. This wasn't simple smuggling. It was a full-scale international crime network. President Traoré handed the evidence directly to Interpol, sparking a global crackdown. Bank accounts were frozen. Arrest warrants were issued, one by one. The network's shadowy figures, arms dealers, financiers, and political saboteurs began to fall. The story had grown far beyond Burkina Faso. It became a symbol of an entire continent rising to say, enough. A new legacy was taking shape. One of unity, dignity, and independence. From weapons to school bells, from fear to strength, from silence to resistance. That day was officially declared National Awakening and Victory Day. Every year, schools across Burkina Faso would teach this story, passing down the lessons of courage, unity, and resilience to future generations. In his final address of the operation, President Traoré spoke with conviction. This victory proves that Africa no longer needs to depend on anyone. We can protect ourselves. We can shape our own future, and when we stand together, we are unstoppable. Not by weapons, not by money, not by deceit. He hadn't just dismantled an arms trafficking empire, he had rewritten the narrative of a continent. Africa, he said, will no longer be a dumping ground for weapons. It will be a source of hope, peace, and brotherhood. That was the real miracle. Not the capture of 57 trucks of weapons, but the winning of 57 million hearts. And those hearts now beat with one rhythm. The rhythm of freedom, independence, and a new Africa. The struggle for liberation is not over, Traoré concluded. It has only just begun. If you believe in Africa's awakening, if you stand for truth, justice, and independence, join this journey, like, share, and make sure the voice of Africa echoes across the world.